And we're live.
Nice. So how does this actually work? So like how do people find out that they could join this? Like how would they know?
So you know how you get recommended videos?
Yeah.
Well, live streams are getting recommended more now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So anybody who
So
has sort of like an interest in shown an interest in investing or something like that might get this.
yeah. So the title of this one is The Canadian Retirement Nest Egg.
Okay. All
Of the
right.
magnetic investors, what percentage would you say, are nearing retirement, at retirement? What percentage would you say?
I would say probably a really good percentage of them. I would say, well, first of all, I can tell you the bulk of our clientele are 50 plus. And a good percentage of them 60 plus.
Okay. So when you're having conversations or initial consults, like what are recurring themes that come up if they've never been introduced to the space before?
Yeah, that's a
Or
great question. I mean, like when most of the time when I'm meeting people, especially in that demographic, I mean, they're saying exactly what you'd expect. I've worked all my life. I've got a nest egg and I just want it to make money so I can travel or so I can not have to work or not worry. Um, we get a lot of people who've been landlords for a long time
mm,
and are tired of the headaches of being a landlord. And so um, they found out that in private lending they can essentially still be invested in the real estate, still be on title, but not have the headaches of managing tenants or repairs or maintenance or any of those things. So you get a lot of those they convert from owners to lenders. And funny thing about them is, most of the time once they get started, then the next conversation I have with them, they're like, why didn't I do this sooner? But the reality is that buying the real estate when you're younger makes a lot of sense because you're able to that asset will grow and appreciate over time, and so you inherit equity that way.
and culturally, Canadians are kind of addicted to real estate, I find.
Yeah, and you can't you need the leverage when you're younger, of buying real estate where you're putting 10 or 15 or 20% down, and you're getting that asset, 100% of the asset, so to speak. So
Okay.
but for the most part, the people I'm talking to are, they're thinking their whole thought process is around, I'm tired of working and I want to do some other things with my time.
Okay. So you find them their first deal, and how does that go when they get the initial file? And because I remember when I got my first deal, like in that demographic, what's the typical response?
Well, I mean, everything becomes real once you put an opportunity in front of somebody. So we pay, more attention um, to the investor when it's their first time, and I want to make sure that they know, okay, look, the first time it's going to be like drinking from a fire hose. The paperwork's going to feel overwhelming. The whole process might feel, you know, uh, I guess overwhelming is the best word, but we have people in place to help you manage that and make it simple and keep it simple, right? The nice thing about dealing with, I guess, a company like Magnetic is that we're standardized. So, by being standardized, what I mean is that all the deals start looking the same, right? So
Oh, they do. Yeah.
we work in a narrow box, right? So what you're seeing as the investor is the 1 or 2 out of 10 that checks all the boxes, because you're not seeing the 8 or 9 that we declined. right
Yeah.
right, you're only seeing the one. And so that 1 or 2 out of 10, they share a lot of characteristics, right? So as you do 1 and 2 and 4 and 6 and 8 of these, you start to realize, okay, they all kind of look the same, and there's comfort in that familiarity.
What so they don't necessarily have like common concerns or anything. It's all
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess the most common line of questioning that we get is what happens
if they
when
don't
it
pay.
doesn't, yeah, when it doesn't work, right? What
Yeah.
happens when some goes wrong? I mean, the reality is it's very rare, but it does happen that something doesn't go right. The borrower runs into trouble of some kind, but that's what the legal process is for, if necessary. And there's lots of steps before you get into having to exercise your rights with the collateral. So, look, we're lending to homeowners. Homeowners work hard to get into the market, right? Like you got to do a lot of things right to become a homeowner. And so the collateral is very powerful. Like you don't have to remind people what happens if they don't live up to their obligations. So, a couple, you should feel fairly comfortable just for that. But that's the most common line of questioning is what happens when, right? Or if. And we try to spend more time with people exploring that. And also, I think one of the things we do that's different than most is we don't keep it veiled, right? We try to teach the process. So the advantage of working with Magnetic is that you don't have to do the work, but it doesn't mean we have to shield you from what the work is. We can teach you what's being done on your behalf behind the scenes.
I imagine
We
most
can,
investors are curious.
yeah, very curious, right? They want to know how it works, and we try to distill the process down into simple, digestible material so that it can be understood. Like, you know, um, being able to let people know that, look, first and foremost, at the first sign of trouble, right? We're on the phone talking to the borrower, and let's just bring context to it. If you're the borrower, everybody realizes there's a problem. So now it's just a matter of working through what do we have to do to get you from now until the exit. And when you're on the way in, we're talking about three things, right? The collateral doesn't really involve you, right? It's just is the collateral strong enough that if we get everything wrong, or everything changes right after we lend you the money, that the collateral can sort of set us free. But then, in the underwriting process, we're looking at like, do you have the ability to pay? Right. And ethically, we don't want to put you in a position where you couldn't pay. And of course, you don't want to be in a position where you can't pay. And if we know that going in, it's just sell it now, right? Like if you're not going to be able to maintain the obligations, that's very clear. Then, why get a mortgage? Just sell the property because that's where we're headed anyways.
That's the first thing you always say. That's what you always told me. You're like, listen, you should sell. If you really don't want to, we can proceed, but you should sell.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you really don't, yeah, but I mean, there's a line, right? Like there's a lot of times where we just
I mean, like proceed the investigation, like proceed with the deep dive, not necessarily proceed like approve, but
yeah. Yeah, on the surface, you're right. So on the surface, it looks like a sell. But if you want, I'll do a deeper dive and see if there's a way, right? And so the easiest way is to look at two things: the exit strategy and the ability to pay. And so, if either one of those doesn't add up, because the one common exit, right, the one that's always an option is the sale. But why would you pay the high prices of private mortgages? You'd only do that as a bridge, right? This is the other sort of philosophy that I think is so important for people to understand and adopt is like the only reason you would take on a private mortgage is if there's a better day ahead in the short term, right? So you're looking at it and you're going, okay, I need the 100 grand that's in my house to fix whatever issue I have that's financially related. And that equity, so I'm equity rich, but I'm cash poor. So I need somebody to unlock that equity for you. You go to the bank goes, well, you don't qualify, even though it's your house, right? Like you own it, but they'll only leverage it so much. You come to private and we get more flexible. So we go, okay, So we can see a path. As long as we can see a path to the other side, we can bridge you there. It costs more than you'd like to pay, but it's manageable for a year or two. And if that's what it takes, okay. So, and put numbers to it. If you need $100,000 out of your house to reverse course and get your situation straightened away so you do qualify at the bank, right? So you go to the bank and the bank goes, you don't qualify for these reasons. You go, okay, I can fix those if I could unlock the equity in my house. So then I come along and I go, tell you what, I'll lend you 85,000, but you pay me back 100. That puts in perspective the cost of borrowing. So let's call it $15,000. So if it costs you $15,000 to find a way back to the bank, right, by unlocking 85, you can digest that. No different than if you said, I want to sell this house, but I got a real problem with the roof. And if I don't fix the roof, it's going to be hard for me to get top dollar. So now I'm going to put $15,000 into the roof. No different. It's just a cost associated with your house. So in the short term, you can look at it that way and it makes sense and it's manageable. And we can see it too, right? So we look at it and we go, okay, it makes sense. Yeah, okay, small price to pay. But if you have no identifiable exit, and then you're taking this shot, it's likely, not going to end well for anybody. Now that's the borrower side. On the investing side, getting back to sort of the topic of tonight, you're certainly, when you're in retirement age and given that stage of life, you're certainly you should be very happy that you're working with a company who's not only ethically, but not going to lend money to people who are exceedingly risky to default, right? That's not what we want. We're looking at a win-win here, right?
Yeah.
Investor gets a predictable, consistent return that the borrower can afford or manage for a short period of time. And then we, shake hands and move on when they pay us back. And that's it. And you're not looking for someone to pay you, you're not looking for a borrower who's your partner in this for 5 or 10 years. Like,
no,
it's not sustainable.
Well, that definitely doesn't help them. Maybe I'm not close enough to retirement age, but I understand that in the market we're in right now, like LTV is just, I imagine, top of mind for investors. But let's say we're in a normal market and it's either stable or slightly going up. The primary concern is interruptions. So the borrower's like either ability to pay or historical performance. I guess in the form of a credit score or something. Like, I just don't want any interruptions. I want my check every month. So at that point, you could even take on higher LTVs or second positions because you're not so much concerned about like market downturns, but you just want to make sure there's no interruptions.
Take less.
Would you?
Just take
less.
Yeah, the answer is take less. I mean, because
if it's a second, right, and it pays 10, but the borrower is like a very high quality borrower, it's just that like it's a second and it's higher LTV, you're getting more every month, and the chances of interruptions is less.
No.
No?
I would say the correlation between interruptions and rate of return is positive, meaning when one goes up, so does the other. So, and the same relationship with LTVs. I think
But the reason it's up is because of the higher LTV in second position. Like, you could have a lower quality borrower in first position at a lower LTV, right? And then you could have higher likelihood of interruptions. No?
Yeah, I mean, it would be a matrix,
Yeah.
right? It would be a matrix where you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, higher LTV, higher rate of return, higher rate of interruptions. I mean, lower LTV, higher rate of return, less interruptions. higher LTV, lower rate of return. I'm not sure.
Higher interruptions.
Yeah, higher interruptions. Yeah,
Yeah.
you would be if you get that wrong, you're doing yourself a disservice, right? If you're getting a higher LTV, lower return, you're probably not pricing properly.
Okay.
I think that's a really interesting. I would love to figure out that matrix actually, because
Of deals that have interruptions, what would you say is like a common thread? I know you're going to say they're all unique and they're all different, but like, is it low credit score? Is that like the be all end all of most likely to have interruptions? I guess there's other.
well, my mind goes to different types of interruptions, right? You're thinking, I think you're.
I just don't get the check for
Yeah.
like October, November rolls around, no payment.
Yeah, it's interesting though. So you think about that in terms probably only of when your money's out.
Yes.
See, and so when your money is out, you don't want a missed payment, which is what you're classifying as an interruption.
Okay,
right?
you thought I meant like cash on the sidelines, lack of deals.
They're both the same to me.
Okay.
They're both the same to me. So you're talking about an interruption because of a missed payment. And
Yes.
I'm saying there's two different types of interruptions. There's interruptions for missed payments, and there's also or default activity. And there's also interruptions because you are so set on what you want to find in the marketplace and it's not available right now. And so your money sits on the sideline and you are interrupted.
Yeah. No, if I'm retired and my money's sitting, I mean, I know Chris is working hard to find me something I'd be happy with. I wouldn't be mad at that.
Right. Okay. So interruptions due to payment,
Yeah.
missed payments. Well, that's an interesting one. What causes them? I'm not going off statistical data. I'm going off, feel and experience. I would say the biggest thing is debt ratios. So we spend an incredible amount of time doing, in a lot of cases, the broker's job. A good mortgage broker representing a borrower coming into the private mortgage arena should really be doing the work of creating an application and a plan, right? Like there should be a plan here. So like, remember, we're building a bridge over troubled water. That plan of how we get from one side of the bridge to the other should come from the broker. Oftentimes it doesn't. Oftentimes brokers will just sort of be like, well, the plan is to refinance in a year, but how are you going to get there? And so we do that work internally, right? Because we want to make sure there is an actual viable plan, both ethically and of course strategically. I find the biggest indicator of missed payment activity is over leverage and overutilization of debt. So you want to look at the borrower's picture, income, credit, and not look at the traditional, I just want to look at the credit score, right? Oh, it's a high score, it's a low score. But look at the activity and how is debt being managed by this person historically, currently, and then look at the income and say, okay, let's do a reasonable analysis. And it's not difficult. Okay. So let's say, for example, somebody says, I'm making $100,000. Now, let's imagine we've verified it, because obviously that's step two. But step one is just, okay, let's just take it at face value for what it says in the application. So if you're making $100,000, it's not difficult for me to figure out how much you're likely to be taking home. Okay, so look at, what are you taking home? I mean, we can estimate it. We can say average 35%, 40% tax bracket, right?
6.5. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can go online and you can go to a net pay calculator, enter in the exact amount, what province you're in, and all the rest of it, and it'll tell you exactly to the penny. So now it gets more difficult, so to speak, if someone's self-employed, because you don't know if they're filing their taxes, if they're doing it correct. But we can make assumptions that if this person is following the rules, their tax bracket should be X. So And that's the sort of the smarter way to go about it. Is better to be safe than sorry. So we'll estimate, on the side of caution. So now you've got their net income, and now you're looking at, okay, if we give this person the mortgage they've applied for, how much do they have to pay every month? Not just for the mortgage, but the property taxes, the heat, groceries, average living expenses. And you can get a sense, right? For if the mortgage itself is like 70% of the borrower's income, what are the chances of default?
Mm.
Right? And
That's
that's the borrower's ability to pay. So you have to look at those ratios and say, okay, so standard ratios for bank level mortgages would be 35% of your income, gross income, just for the mortgage payment and property taxes and heat.
okay.
Okay, so if you're
That's not TDS. What's the other one?
that's GDS.
Yeah, GTS.
So
Okay.
gross debt service ratio. If you are 35% or below, that would qualify for a bank mortgage. Your total debt service ratio is those three things: mortgage, payment, property taxes, heat, plus consumer debts that you have to service, loans, lines of credit, minimum payments to all those. And that can go up to about 42% of your gross income, not net. Okay. So as you get into from an A bank to a B bank, those ratios get expanded. So where, a trust company might allow you to go to 50 or 55% of your gross income for your total debt service ratio, and some as high as 60%.
Damn.
Okay, so 60% of your gross income goes to mortgage, property taxes, heat, and consumer debts every month. So basically what the government is saying and what the banks are saying is it's acceptable in some cases that you only have 40% of your gross income left over for living expenses, variable living expenses. But when you take tax into account,
There's like 5% left.
yeah. So we have to be realistic, viable. So you look at that and you say, is there a situation? Now, we have some influence on the ratios, right? The ability to influence. How do we do that? Well, let's say, for example, the person is carrying, 3 or 4 loans, and the payments to those loans are, $500 each a month. And they're, $50,000 each. So you got $200,000 of debt. But if we took that 200,000, we put it into the mortgage, the monthly payment to service that is $1,000, not 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
So consolidating the debt can work. And that's the whole point of it, is to bring debt service ratios down and to boost credit, right? So you get closer to qualifying on both levels with a bank. Again, our job is to turn the person's circumstances around and send them back to the bank as quickly as possible.
And do you, when dealing with an investor who's a retiree, do you pay extra attention to a particular? I know there's 15. Do you pay attention to a particular rate score component where it's like this investor, they kind of want their check every month, they're dependent on it. We need to minimize. Do you think about minimizing interruptions, or is it really holistic every single time?
Well, I mean, we're thinking about, if I had to prioritize, we're thinking about minimizing risk on every mortgage we do, right? So we're trying to make them all perfectly safe, and it doesn't matter as an investor what you choose, you can feel good about it, and it's going to be a boring ride. You just get your payments every month. But are there certain investors and certain circumstances, the investor stage of life they're at, or so on, that dictates that we take additional caution, same way we would take additional caution for a borrower and not put them in a position that they can't get out of? You certainly want to exercise more caution with certain types of investors. And again, that's why when you're on the way in, we talk to you about what do you need, not what you want. Okay, so there's two. So on the way in, I might ask you, okay, I'm trying to determine by conversation whether you have a wealth building goal or a production goal. You rarely have both. So what's a wealth building goal? Well, a wealth building goal is, I'm saving for the future. I'm earning for the future. I'm trying to build my nest egg, right? And so you may take a little bit more risk or feel more comfortable because you have time on your side. So you may say, yeah, you know what, I'm good with a little more yield. I'm comfortable with the risk across the whole spectrum of what magnetic does, but I'd like to be in the higher end of yield because time is on my side. I trust it and I feel good about it. And I want to get my 9 or 10.
I remember the first time I declined a deal that wasn't a 10. I was like, no, just keep going.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
you had the conversation about the opportunity cost. But yeah,
Yeah.
but,
So the wealth builder, right? Usually a little younger, more time, and so on. Then the production goal is what happens when you flip over into retirement, where now you're counting on your nest egg to produce a result for you. You're not trying to build the nest egg anymore. You're trying to leverage the nest egg and have it survive you, right? Produce for you until the end and then go to somebody else you love and do something for them. So that's the first thing we try to identify with people is what is your goal? Is it a production goal or is it a wealth building goal today? It can change, right? Like you go from wealth building to production as you age. So that's number one. And then you can get into now what are we talking? We're talking about a production goal? Okay. If we're talking about a production goal, we are much more focused on risk mitigation, like almost uber focused on it. Whereas if you had a wealth building goal, we're a little bit more elastic about the risk because we're comfortable with the whole spectrum of our risk. But we're looking for ways to get more yield.
sprinkle in some 11s.
Yeah, sprinkle. That's it. Sprinkle in some 11s. It's really well put. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I remember my first 11. It was just so smooth the whole way. I was like, oh, I thought it was going to be bumpier than this. I wanted to try out my first 11, and I got ready to like hold on. And
Well, the reality
wasn't.
is we just don't have a lot of missed payments or any of that. I mean, this year, I would have to check the numbers, but I would say we've averaged less than. I wouldn't be surprised if we were under 2 per month missed payments
Of missed payments. Oh wow.
on average, and many months with nothing.
Yeah.
With everybody pays, right? So but granted, I can't speak for the whole industry because I think our underwriting is superlative. Like I think our underwriting and the way we approach things from the very beginning is what leads to less interruptions and less challenges as we go, a smoother ride and all the rest of it. I think you have to have the whole thing. You can't just slide into private lending and say, oh, Chris said, it's going to be super smooth. There's so many nuances, so many little things we do to pick and choose the right opportunities to try to structure things in a way that truly mitigates potential risks before they become rooted. Um, it's like it's like it's like we're approaching this with like Eastern medicine. We're like preventative.
Yeah. You guys are super preventative.
Yeah. So you're trying, but you're trying to be preventative, but also squeeze out, a little extra yield where you can. But I think it's a healthy way to approach is go, look, I'm coming in here and I'm expecting to make 6 or 7%. That's the expectation you should have, because if you walked into a bank and they had, just imagine if RBC put a sign out tomorrow morning that said, we now have a 1-year GIC pays 7. How much money? How much money people would pour into that?
Yeah.
So, if you see it that way and you go, uber safe, 7%, that's what I want. but then you're open-minded to the fact that there are opportunities where if we structure well and if we do the proper due diligence um, and and look for a specific type of opportunity and use our knowledge and our experience to mitigate risk from the very beginning, there are opportunities to get 8 or 9 or 10 or 11 safely. And so, as you said, you sprinkle those in, right? You look for those opportunities, and back to the original top or statement I made, you're talking about needles in haystacks. You're talking about 1 or 2 out of 10. I was just today, I was looking at the inventory of applications that are currently under review. And I was talking to one of my partners about it, and we were looking at it together and saying, there's an abundance of applications flowing in right now. There's so many. We look at the list and we see 25, 27, 28 at a time that we're looking at. And between him and I, we know there's probably, we're looking through that to find 3 or 4 good mortgages, 5 maybe,
This is right now is higher than average volume.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean,
What's
higher than
happening?
average. Well, my personal opinion, you see I think there's a lot of people who lived through a time where, for the most part, if they over leverage themselves in any way, or if anything happened in life, like bumpy, not necessarily somebody being reckless, but just like circumstance happened, houses were consistently appreciating. It was kind of the bailout, right? You could go to the bank, refinance, get a little bit of money, band-aid that problem. Okay. You eat into a little bit of your equity, but you could get out. And now, with the market being the way it is, banks are saying, not with us, and appreciation isn't happening. In fact, depreciation has happened. So, people are getting a little bit squeezed, and they're looking, a lot of the applications we see right now are for 80% of the value, the maximum will offer. And a lot of times the borrower is asking for more money than they need. And it's us. But if we do the right due diligence, we can look at it and go, okay, I see the solution. I see the solution to your current challenge, but you don't need as much money as you've applied for. It would feel good to get all that money, but I'm looking out for you, and I'm saying it's going to make it harder for you to get back to the bank. It's going to make it hard. The less you can borrow from us, the better. And this is very important. A very important reason why we're successful is we don't let people bite off more than they can chew, even though when they're feeling a certain way, they will try to bite off more than they can chew.
And you don't let them wipe the slate clean if it puts unnecessary. How did you phrase it? We don't let unsecured problems become secured problems.
Not if we don't have to. Yeah. We only secure the part that we need to secure in order to affect a positive impact on the outcome. Mm-hmm. Right? You remember, somebody comes looking for a private mortgage, we're thinking about getting them out of here. Right? So it's like, how do we turn them around and get them out? What I'm looking for on your behalf as an investor is, how can I find 12 or 13 months of yield for Nick? Not, how can I link Nick to a borrower who's on the Never Never program?
Yeah. Whoa,
right?
This is new. What's the Never Never program?
Well, it's the Never Never plan. It means once you're in private, you just keep paying every month, and you can never get out.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. Loan to own, Never Never. I'm getting a feel for all these
Well,
archetypes.
that loan to own is worse. I mean, loan to own is, you're not just stuck; you're drowning.
Yeah.
And we saw it when we got here. We knew you were drowning. We let you get in the water anyways. And you have bricks in your pockets.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of this where I don't know if the bank has way more events of default that they
No, they don't.
They define or something, but someone will renew their 5-year fix, then a lot of people are just like not. The banks are not allowing them to renew.
Look,
And there's been like these weird definitions of events of default, or like these, maybe the stress tests are tighter. I don't know what, but I'm like, how like, if they're not in arrears or anything, they haven't missed a payment, like they still have their job, their credit, everything. It's just that,
well,
like,
banks have the right. It used to be where banks would just like send you a letter, and if you signed it back, you're renewed. But now banks are taking the time to say, I think what we'd like to do is we'd like to redo the application. Like, I want to see where you're at. Like 5 years ago was a different time, and now you're renewing for another 5 years. We want to make sure you're still good.
oh
That didn't
man,
used to happen very much, right? It would just, again, be a standard letter. You sign it back, you're still paying, everything's fine, keep going.
yeah,
Now it's different. Now banks want to see, what your debt ratios are, and want to reevaluate things. Things may have changed in the last 5 years, and they're right to do that. I mean, that's smart.
yeah,
But let me speak to the default activity, and I'm not going to quote any numbers or anything. But if you read the news, you will see sensationalized numbers that, look, the historical default rate for mortgages in Canada is less than half of 1%. Now, if you read news today, you'll see default activity is up over 60% over last year. But if you look at the numbers, like if we were half of 1% and we increase that by 60%, you'd still be under 1%.
yeah, yeah.
That's the
60%
piece.
increase of of practically none. Yeah.
That's the piece that's not in the article.
Hmm.
So you have to look at things from context. I mean, are there more defaults today than there was in the time where everybody's house was appreciating at breakneck speed? Yes. Are things tougher today? Yes. Is the cyclical nature of real estate such that values will come back? If I was a betting man, I'd probably bet on it. How long will it take? We don't really know. Is there uncertainty in the market? Yes. Does it make people scared right now? Yes. Are properties depreciating? Yes. Everywhere? No. Is it depreciating at a ridiculous pace that you can't keep up as a lender? No, not if we're lending 1 year at a time like we do. I mean, there was an article that came out not long ago, somebody brought to my attention, and they were like, look at this, property values are down 30%. I think it was 30% since 2022. That's crazy. And I was like, is that the worst it's ever been? They're like, yeah, that's what the article says. It's like the worst it's ever been. And that's 10% a year over 3 years. And we have a 20% buffer. At the highest risk mortgage we lend, we have a 20% buffer, double the worst case scenario of all time. Like, I mean, it's when you put context to it, there's, like we talked about earlier, there's a reason why banks get insurance for mortgages over 80% of the value and don't get insurance for under 80%. And I think I do want to repeat it like that, the analogy we talked about earlier, where it's like under 80%, they don't take insurance when they could, and it would protect them, but you would pay for it. So for them to say we don't need it, right? It'd be one thing if they had to pay for it and they're like, at 80%, I think we can get rid of that cost. We don't need that cost. But if the cost is being borne by the borrower and they're saying, it's okay, don't worry about it, we don't need that protection, it tells you they've done their homework and they're pretty comfortable at 80%.
The math people have spoken.
the oracle has,
yeah. That 30% down number. What is that? Is that the country, or is that homes in the GTA? What is that?
I don't remember the context, but it was brought to my attention, right? They're like, wow, values are home. They're down by 30% since 2022. If that's true, it's still okay.
Yeah.
Survivable.
Yeah. Because I heard that number, and I think it's homes in the GTA. Mm-hmm. So if that number encompasses, like pre-sale condos, for example, and you're lending, the majority of your book is lent against detached single family,
Mhm.
that means that 30% doesn't apply to you, or at least it doesn't apply against the collateral you lend against.
Yeah, and I think, listen, I know somebody's going to watch this and be like, this guy thinks it's okay to lose 30% over that. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's manageable if you do things right way. If you keep the right buffer and you do your due diligence properly and you reevaluate the property every year, reappraise it, take another look. You know, banks are doing it every 5 years. We're doing it every year, right? Looking at the borrower and seeing if things have changed. Can they still make the payments for another year before you renew them, before you extend them? Do you still think they can make the payments? Do you still think there's a viable exit plan? Then yes, you can survive depreciation.
Mm-hmm. Do your retired investors, are they, let's not paint a broad brush, but would you say they prefer renewals when the borrower renews, or do they prefer getting like a fresh deal done?
Investors?
Yeah.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, I think for the most part, I have to say, the vast majority of our investors don't really, they don't really complain either way. If it's
Early discharge, it's all good. Renewed for another year, it's all
yeah, they
good.
just keep. But I think part of that is we set their expectations properly at the beginning. But then you have certain investors who will squawk both ways.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh, you said 12 months and now he's paying out in 6. Well, he's giving you your money back. You know,
Yeah.
you can lend it to somebody else. Oh, you said it was 12 and now it's 15. Well, yes, you know, the things changed a little bit and we still have a viable plan and he's made all the payments and everything's still good. You know, it's just gonna take a little longer. So you
Is
have
the
to have some.
retirement camp leaning more in general, like on one side or the other? It's just like a
I
mixed
don't
bag.
think I don't think it has anything to do with which camp you're in, like which
Yeah.
stage of life. I think it's just a certain type of personality.
Okay.
Certain types of investors are, you know, they're right on top of us, which is great because it keeps us accountable to what we're doing. They're actually some of my favorite people because I don't take it as, you know, irritant. I take it as like it's good. Like it's a watchdog. Somebody's watching what we're doing. They're paying attention. You know, on the other hand, I also really appreciate and respect the part of our audience that kind of looks and goes, you know what? You're doing a great job. Keep doing it. I trust you. If you say turn right, we turn right. If you say turn left, we turn left. And that's a responsibility that we don't take lightly, right? That doesn't sit lightly on our shoulders, so to speak.
Well, the more
So
deals go well, the more you're like, all right, Chris, go ahead.
yeah, of course, right? And listen, I'll say something else. Some of the most loyal investors who have been outspoken about that, right? Like following and saying, listen, Chris, I trust you, are the people who've been through a mortgage that didn't go right and watched how we handled it. And listen, I will say this to anybody who listens: don't judge us. Don't judge us when everything's great, the market is beautiful, everybody's lending, appreciation is going rampant at bailing people out. Don't judge us then. Judge us during COVID. You know, when the courts aren't open, when you can't get an appraiser into a house, when everything is completely different. Judge us when interest rates skyrocket and you know there's all kinds of pressure in the market, and now we've got challenges to deal with where people's first mortgages, we're in second and somebody's first mortgage payment just went up by $1,000 a month. They have to adjust to that. Or judge us, you know, in a market like this where properties are depreciating. We have to navigate that and really be great at our, you know, due diligence. And here's what you see through all of that: COVID, high interest rates, and now this market steady, right? Our numbers steady, our results steady, our returns consistent, you know, our default rates steady. So, you know, that's to me, that's the show. That's the mark of a professional.
Not when it's easy breezy.
No, anybody can be. Like you look at, for example, like when the market, this is a good example. Like when in the days I'm friends with a number of extremely good real estate agents, right? Who I've come to know over the years, and they really distinguish themselves just as true professionals and whatnot. And you sit down and you talk to them, and they'll tell you the same thing. A few years ago, when housing market is just going crazy and houses are selling in bidding wars in everywhere, and it's put a sign up on the lawn, it's sold tomorrow for 300,000 over asking. Everybody can be a realtor.
I saw so many people become realtors, like just on Facebook randomly.
Yeah.
Like, oh, so and so's a realtor. Oh, they're a realtor. Oh,
yeah, the houses are selling themselves.
Yeah.
But then get into a market like this, and you find out who the true professionals are, because anyone who's not dies, right? They fall out of the market. Same thing now. You lose a lot of mortgage brokers out of the market because it's one of those professions that's sort of low barriers to entry. It's easy to get a license. It's easy to get started. Now, to sustain a business, though, to build a real business and then turn it into an enterprise and whatnot, and build a team and be consistent and not be living check to check, deal to deal, that's the true mark of a professional entrepreneur. So it's not easy right now. Not easy. Not an easy market, but our results are the same, if not better, actually.
Regarding risks and depreciation and stuff, do you pay attention to the percentage of listings that are power of sale? Does that affect like your exit, your view of like someone's exit strategy? It's like, okay, if we get there, well, this area has like more power of sales on a percentage basis of listings than like this other.
No, I fully admit that I have tunnel vision to our portfolio, our methodology, our way of doing things, our approach. I don't pay attention to any of the statistics and news I see about default activity around me, because it doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is managing the ones we chose, we did due diligence on, we made decisions, built structures around, and manage those and manage them well. And that has served us very well. It's not that I'm blind to what's out there, just so we're clear. Like, I'm not saying I'm reckless and I don't pay any attention to what's happening in the market around me. I just don't give it much of my personal attention, because what matters to us is what's inside the walls of Magnetic, right? And how we're doing and the people we're serving, right? And if you're not with us, listen, here's what I know. You can, in really good times, you can be the sloppiest private lender out there and get away with it. You can. Today, markets like today identify your flaws as a lender, right? They identify your flaws as an underwriter. They push you, right? If you're a greedy person, if your commitment isn't very good, if your underwriting lacks, depth, if you haven't thought things all the way through, if you don't document things, all of that can come back to bite you in a tougher marketplace. And so we focus, so much of our attention on us, how we do it.
Okay, you're describing things at a way more foundational level. You're not, because I remember when we were having discussions about how you saw certain peers or maybe other lenders, how they would behave in markets that were, let's say, white hot in appreciation. Things like 95% LTV, maybe even 100, and like being greedy, charging crazy yields, and now it's like it's kind of like way more foundational. You don't even say don't be silly. You're just like, no, you got to be way more dialed in on the fundamentals.
Yeah, these markets are great for us. Honestly, they really are. They're such a good test. COVID was a great test. The high interest rate market was a great test. The depreciating value market is a great test. It really pressure tests all your underwriting. It pressure tests all your solutioning, how you deal with default activity. All of that are pressure tests. So you find where the flaws are and you identify new ones. If we were just coasting all the time in an easy markets, there wouldn't be much challenge to it. There'd just be tons more competition.
Yeah. Any final thoughts for people holding on to their nest egg and being like, all right, I need to make a decision here.
Here's what I'll tell
But
people.
the financial markets are stressing me out. I don't know where to look.
I mean, you've heard me say this before, but like if you haven't looked, I mean, taken a good look at private lending as a part of your portfolio, you really are missing something because there's a place for it in every portfolio. You just have to look at the fixed income side of the ledger and say, okay, what are you doing for the safest part of your portfolio? I mean, what are you doing? GIC, bond, high interest savings account, something like that. You're probably making the rate of inflation or just under, or maybe just over. And if you took that piece of your portfolio and you investigated private lending, I don't know how you could make a bigger impact on your portfolio than to replace a 3.5 or a 4% GIC with a 6.5 or 7% first mortgage, private mortgage. I mean, how are you going to get on the other sides of like on the riskier sides of your portfolio? How are you going to get effectively 75 to 100% yield increase just by making a switch of vehicle?
Yeah.
But you can do that on the fixed income side of your ledger. So yeah, you need to take a look if you're not, man. But word of caution, you also need to have a look into it with people who can explain it properly to you, who understand it inside out. I mean, it sounds like a plug, but it's not a plug. It's just, yes, do I put myself in that category? Do I put our staff in that category? Yeah, for sure. But because we do one thing all day, every day, residential private mortgages in Ontario, that's it. So we become pretty good at it. But you want to learn from somebody or talk to somebody who can answer your questions, and they're all legit. That's the other piece. If you're going to talk to somebody, pepper them with questions about what do you do when somebody misses a payment? How do you structure a loan to make sure that it's safe? How do you make sure that people have the ability to pay? How do you test that? How do you test the exit strategy? How do you do this before you agree to lend my money to somebody? You should ask those questions. Yeah. Do we have any guests?
There's viewers that hopped in and out,
Oh,
but
that's cool.
no one posted today.
All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah.
We'll do it again next time. What happens? These get recorded?
Yeah, they get recorded. I use them for repurposing like all our other stuff, but
Nice.
the recordings stay on the channel in the live section.
So cool.
So it's under TWL live.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Until next time.
Have a good night. See ya.
See you, man.
Bye-bye.